I find it very interesting that people like Pelosi and others want to prosecute those in the Bush administration for such torture activities as waterboarding. It is amazing to me that there is more interest in the rights of people trying to kill us than going after those who authorize dangerous and cruel treatment of our own soldiers. The United States has a long track record of bringing harm to our soldiers. How about a little outrage about that?
And say, Mr. President, this is lawful. That's all I can tell you. I'm not going to tell you specifically what's done because I don't want the enemy to adjust. We're at war. This is people that want to come and kill your families.
Difficult chapter in our history. And one of the tougher decisions that I've had to make as president. On the one hand, we have very real enemies out there. And we rely on some very courageous people, not just in our military, but also in the Central Intelligence Agency, to help protect the American people. And they have to make some very difficult decisions because, as I mentioned yesterday, they are confronted with an enemy that doesn't have scruples, that isn't constrained by constitutions, aren't constrained by legal niceties. Having said that, the OLC memos that were released reflected, in my view, us losing our moral bearings. That's why I've discontinued those enhanced interrogation programs. For those who carried out some of these operations within the four corners of legal opinions or guidance that had been provided from the White House, I do not think it's appropriate for them to be prosecuted. With respect to those who formulated those legal decisions, I would say that that is going to be more of a decision for the Attorney General within the parameters of...
This is a list I found of some of the activities that our government has engaged in. Some of it might be hype, but use pause to check them out.
Vaccines are required if you're headed to war, but Target 5 discovered that a frightening number of U.S. servicemen and women are having severe reactions, including a young Marine from Claremont County.
You only have to look into how the government is pushing for that vaccine for ovarian cancer in young ladies in Texas to know what's going on.
It's unethical to do so.
We don't want to lose a single soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine just because they refuse to take a shot. We try to change their minds. And if they won't change their mind and won't take the shot, then it leads to some kind of disciplinary action.
People can get sick from it.
Of course, you all remember our troops marching into a radioactive area after a detonation of an atomic bomb when we were kids. How could they do that?
37 nations in the Gulf War. Why are there only 4 that have come down with Gulf War syndrome? Why didn't the Kuwaitis develop Gulf War syndrome? They were occupied by Iraq for a number of months.
But there are reasons why.
These are the same minds that pushed aspartame on us and other dangerous sweeteners and flavors.
Is it ironic that we're the only ones that got the vaccine, the anthrax vaccine?
We had ours on the same day, one in each arm.
So who in our government is calling for an investigation as to how they forced our soldiers to take these injections? Who is looking...
From the White House was that Gulf War syndrome is nothing more than post-traumatic stress disorder.
Schwarzkopf, Colin Powell, Mr. Nice Guy, and both the Clintons, and numerous other people said Gulf War syndrome was nothing.
And you probably remember that there was a lot of back and forth. Is Gulf War illness real? Is it not real? And I'll tell you, this report is really quite stunning. It's from a panel of scientific experts. It's going to be presented to the Veterans Administration. It says that 1 out of every 4 veterans deployed to the Gulf War in 90 and 91 suffered from Gulf War illness. That is indeed a huge number. A bigger number than a lot of people expected.
Well, I have to ask you, part of the back and forth is to try to determine a cause. Is there anything in the study, in this reporting, to indicate what caused Gulf War illness, sickness, the syndrome?
Yes, indeed there is. And let's first talk about what Gulf War illness is.
Great.
First of all, it's sort of a conglomeration of different problems: pain, headache, pain throughout the body, GI problems, problems with thinking, with memory and concentration. And this one, Tony, this is the big one, Lou Gehrig's disease. You haven't heard that so much associated. And what they found was that vets who were deployed to the Gulf War in the early 90s, they came down with Lou Gehrig's disease twice as often as other vets who were not deployed. That is a huge number. And we were talking about the cause, so let's talk about it, because there were all sorts of theories floated as to what the cause was for Lou Gehrig's disease. I'm sorry, for Gulf War illness. So they came up with 2 things. One of them is pesticides, that vets who use pesticides, and the other one was anti-nerve gas pills. And so what's really interesting here, so pesticides and anti-nerve gas pills. And let's bring back what we had there a second ago. This is a really interesting sentence that just says it all about this report. It says, scientific evidence leaves no question that Gulf War illness is a real condition with real consequences and real causes and serious consequences. That really says it all. I mean, that you would think might end the debate.
I wonder what can be done now for the veterans.
Well, part of the problem that this report points out is that there hasn't been a lot of research done on Gulf War illness. And so what this report says is, look, we've been spending less and less money on research since 2001. They call for a renewed effort at research so that they can figure out, just what you said, how do you treat these problems?
God bless those guys and gals who had the courage not to take those injections and paid the price as far as discipline. But God bless them for showing courage.
Me to continue to stand up for the men and women of the armed forces of this country. And of course I said I would. It's in my blood to do so. This next story is an absolute shocker. Actually, it's a 2-parter. And it's all over the place. It's McClatchy, it's AP, the veterans groups have even put out a press release. The Obama administration is considering making veterans use private insurance to pay for treatment of combat and service-related injuries. The plan would be an about-face on what veterans believe is a long-standing pledge to pay for health care costs that result from their military service. But in a White House meeting on Monday, veterans groups apparently failed to persuade President Obama to take the plan off the table. Veterans of all generations agree this proposal is bad for the country, bad for veterans, said Paul Rykoff, executive director.
So before you lose any sleep as to what we did to the terrorists, to the people who would love to kill every last one of us, show a little concern for what our government has done in the past, recently in the past, and probably is still doing to our military, including making them worry about how they're going to have insurance to cover their medical bills on war-related issues. Obviously, something's going down in this country, and you can't trust people like Colin Powell and Norman Schwarzkopf and the Clintons and everybody else, because they're all lying to you. And you really got to look out for yourself. Take care.
Right here, yeah. Is there a military or political explanation as to why the Iraqis did not use chemical weapons?
We've got a lot of questions about why the Iraqis did use chemical weapons, and I don't know the answer. I just thank God that they did.
Military or political explanation as to why the Iraqis did not use chemical weapons?
We've got a lot of questions about why the Iraqis did use chemical weapons, and I don't know the answer. I just thank God that they didn't.